Unexpected Journey, Memoir of a Siberian Deportee by Juzė Avižienytė-Žukauskiene. Translated from Lithuanian and narrated by Giedrė Kumpikas, niece of the author, and by Isabelle Kumpikas, the sister of the author. Okay. Chapter 3, Arrest. On June 17th, not having waited for the meeting, I ran home and stretched out on my bed. I was just beginning to doze, a sudden protracted ringing of the doorbell. In the doorway appeared a man. He said in Russian, "Does Liuda Žukauskas live here?" Hearing the grim and familiar voice, I understood immediately who he was and what he had come for. I was speechless. My husband answered for me, "Here." "Weapon," again the same sharp voice. "I don't have one." "There was an order to turn it in. I returned it to the military commander," retorted my husband in the same sharp manner. After a few seconds, a very young armed soldier and a civilian stepped into my bedroom. With angry eyes, the latter looked the room over and turned to me sternly. "Let's go, hurry up and get ready." To ask where and what wasn't necessary. Everything was clear, and yet I felt very disturbed and shocked. None of the children were home. Where the older ones, high school students, were, I did not know. I had to call at their friends' homes. I was hoping to find them at the home of one of their classmates, the son of Colonel Bobalis. They were both preparing for their final examination. They did not allow me to call myself. The MGB man called himself. Ministry of Government Security. In a few minutes, my son and his friend came running in. My son wanted to give his friend his brand new bike. The security men wouldn't even let the boy inside. I asked them to let me find my youngest son, who was playing with his friends in a nearby courtyard. "It's not allowed," came the angry, sharp answer. "But how will he stay here alone, being so little? What will he do? Please let me find him. He's here nearby. I won't disappear anywhere." Almost through tears, I was beginning to beg my leaders. "Okay, go. And you accompany her. Make sure she doesn't talk to anyone," was the order to another civilian. "Is your child far away?" asked the latter in Lithuanian. "No, he doesn't go far. He's probably right here." We found my youngest in a neighboring yard, carefree, playing in the midst of a group of other children. "Yozuk, run home. The Cheka have come to deport us," I said loudly on purpose, so that the people who were looking from a distance at the truck parked in front of our house and the two soldiers at the door would hear us. The frightened child came running to me and started crying pitifully. "Why did you do that? You shouldn't frighten the child with the Cheka," answered the Lithuanian Chekist, lowering his eyes as if he were guilty. "You're frightening him, not I. I'm not surprised that the Russians are killing and destroying us, but you. Why are you, a Lithuanian, doing this Judas work? You shouldn't speak like that. Without us, it might be even more difficult." We turned in through the gate, and with that, all talk stopped. My middle son, who was in 9th grade, came home by bicycle. The older children started packing their personal things into knapsacks, and I, as if in a daze, picked up one thing, then another, put it in, tied it, and kept singing the same verse from a popular Russian song. I know no other such country in which a person could breathe so freely. It was ironic. All around were armed soldiers, and the free person, guilty of nothing, is packing his belongings and is going God knows where. He doesn't even know what will be done with him. The chief of the Cheka was sitting in the study and was interrogating my husband. Periodically, I would hear my husband's angry voice. "Lies, slander, nothing of the sort." The chief of the Cheka warned me that we should only take as many things as we could carry, because we would have to go on foot. He advised us to take food for at least 2 days. I had completely forgotten about food. What should I take? It was already the 17th of June, and we had not yet received our half-month's pay. There was no money left. The children pooled their savings. My middle son, Stasis, ran to the store and bought a small loaf, 2 kilos of bread, a half kilo of butter, and a half kilo of sausage. We had been given a half hour to get ready. We took an hour. No one urged us to hurry. The young soldiers looked at us with sympathy. Whenever there was no Chekist in the room, they themselves started tying bedding, clothing, even albums, silver, knives, forks, spoons into bedspreads or sheets, things which I would not have remembered or not taken because of the weight. I thought they would take these things for themselves. So be it. Everything perishes anyway, and we ourselves may soon perish in the unknown. One of the guards opened the door of the wardrobe and asked to whom we were leaving all that. There were quite a few clothes there. To no one. Whoever will use them. I don't know, I answered. So then take them. You can always throw them out later. But I had no desire to take anything more. I had already packed 2 woolen dresses, 2 silk ones, a couple of blouses and skirts, a couple of sweaters, and was wearing one. I thought even that was too much because it was already hard to close the suitcase. Besides, I had a second suitcase into which I put a couple of suits for my husband, some underwear, some clothes for my youngest. In addition, coats for all 5 of us. Who would carry them? Without being aware of it, I started singing the same words. I know no other such country in which a person could breathe so freely. No one interrupted me, no one shouted at me, no one disturbed me. Only I myself would sometimes fall silent, realizing the situation, but uncontrollably the same verses would again escape from my lips. A young soldier, saying nothing, took out a tablecloth, spread it out on the bed, and having taken the clothes out of the wardrobe, even with their hangers, piled them on the tablecloth, and having tied them into a bundle, carried them out to the truck. I didn't care. I just couldn't rid myself of the irritating words of the song. I went into the kitchen to pack some food and some essential utensils. The chief chekist came in and said very sternly, he probably did not know how to speak differently, "That's enough, hurry up, let's go." But having noticed a silver samovar on the table, he shouted, "Oh, definitely take this little trifle." "But it's heavy, and what will we need it for?" I protested. "Josefa Stanislavovna, this is how much you will need it," and he drew his finger across his neck. I was surprised that the chekist addressed me with such respect, and even with my father's name. So I had to take the trifle. I couldn't always throw it out. Finally, my family with its escort, 2 armed soldiers in the open truck and a chekist in the cab, we were speeding in the direction of the railroad station. They drove us to a reserve freight station located in the suburb of Shanche. They shoved us into freight cars used to transport pigs. Yes, into pig cars, since it was obvious that pigs had been transported. Although the floors had been washed, 2 level bunks had been put in, but one could still see on the wall at a height of about 2 feet remnants of encrusted dung. Besides, the car itself reeked very strongly of dung stench. Here began our road to Calvary. It was already dark outside and quite dark in the car, because 2 small windows, which were only on one side of the car, were tiny, and even these had been covered with iron bars. The door gate could be pushed open only from one side. On the other side, it had been tightly nailed shut. Near that door, a hole in the floor had been made, and into it had been placed a 2-foot-high box made of light boards. That was the car's toilet. The car was already inhabited. In the semi-darkness, human shapes appeared. Near the closed doors were piled up bundles of apparently also hurriedly tied clothing. On the second level of the bunks, we found an empty corner. There we shoved in our belongings and climbed in ourselves. The children felt hungry. Well, for this evening, we still had bread and butter. I gave each a slice. When the screeching door closed, it became completely dark. Those arrested earlier immediately began to question us. Who? From where? For what reason? How? It appeared that we were already 26 people, 3 Jewish and 3 Lithuanian families. As best as possible, we began to get settled in our corner. The children went to sleep while we stayed up. We were not sleepy, although our tension had subsided somewhat. After all, our fate had been decided. Suddenly, the door screeched open. Against its background dimly appeared 3 shadows. It was the wife and the 2 little daughters of Colonel Girunas, one 7, the other 5 years old. The little one was clutching a huge doll, holding it close to her chest, and was crying aloud. The older one was crying quietly. "Girls, don't cry. Lithuanians are not supposed to cry," said the mother with her soft, melodious voice. "Is Giriūnas here?" she asked in a louder voice. "No, he's not," someone answered. Then she rushed to the door and began to speak very quickly. "Wait, don't close the door. We haven't been arrested. I came here with my children of my own free will. I want to find my husband and learn something about his fate. Whatever his fate, let ours be the same. Let me find him and let us leave together." The crack in the door widened and she jumped out of the car. The girls started crying loudly again. We all came out of our dark corners and tried to calm them as best we could, but it didn't help. They began to cry with intermittent sobs. Everyone felt sad and desolate. After a while, the mother returned accompanied by a guard and took the girls. It seemed that her husband really was in this echelon. Morning. The screeching door opened. The guard said that 10 people could get out and get some water from a nearby spring and wash themselves. It was fortunate that I had put food and some dishes into 2 enamel pails. I emptied them and grabbing them jumped out of the car. Accompanied by the guard, we went to the small spring. We washed ourselves and having drawn some cold, refreshing water, went back to the car. Someone from a Jewish family had a tea kettle. In the second group, whoever had anything they could use brought back some water. At least we wouldn't suffer from thirst. Sometime later, one of the security men arrived and asked if anyone had a complaint. We were surprised. In our situation, what complaints could we possibly have? Still, I dared to speak up. What sort of complaints could we possibly have in our situation? Well, I have a request, and a very big one. I worked in the state bank. I did not receive my salary for the month of June. If possible, please bring it to me or let me go to the bank where I worked and pick it up myself. The functionary wrote down my request. He closed the door so that only a crack was left through which I was possible to look out and even stick out a hand. A guard was walking back and forth in front of the door. We all started to eat a little of whatever we had. Once again, I gave the children each a small slice of bread with butter and looked anxiously at the loaf which was getting smaller, and fearfully thought what would happen when it was finished. In the afternoon, the checkers who had been there in the morning arrived and called out my name. I jumped out of the car. The others, glued to the windows and the crack of the door, looked very curiously as to what would take place. "Here, Josefa Stanislavovna, I brought you your pay." I even jumped for joy. "Thank you. I really thank you very much. And this is from your friends and co-workers." And he extended a second envelope with money. There were 200 rubles and a note. I was so touched that my lips trembled and I began to cry. I couldn't even read what they had written. "What? Didn't they pay you correctly? Did they shortchange you?" asked the worried functionary. "No, it's not that. I was moved to tears by the concern of my friends," I answered. "Ah," and he left. In the envelope was only 260 rubles, my salary for the second half of June. I was confused. Why for the second half? I was supposed to be paid for the first half and for my vacation. That is, after deductions, about 1,000 rubles. And I was being paid only for the second half, of which I had only worked 2 days, 260 rubles. But I didn't care. There was no way to clarify the matter. It was important that I had money, and at least for the moment, my family was not threatened by hunger. When I had calmed down, I read my friend's letter. They expressed their sympathy and asked me to forgive them for helping only that much. They all contributed what they had, since they had not yet received their salaries for the first half of June. On June 19th, we were still standing in the same place, and trucks were constantly bringing newly arrested people. Towards evening, 2 of my co-workers came, Avizienyte and Zukauskiene. They brought another 250 rubles personally from their own salary. Both their eyes and mine glistened with tears. We were able to say very little. Nearby stood a guard and repeated quite indulgently, "That's enough, comrades. The superiors will see us. Then both you and I will get it." We said goodbye. Uncontrollable tears ran down our cheeks. We said goodbye for all time. What was ahead for me? What was ahead for them? I never met my caring co-workers again, even though after 22 years of forced exile, I returned to Lithuania. Notes. Juozuk, diminutive of Juozas or Joseph in English, equivalent to Joey. Čeka, Special Commission, former KGB. Stasys, an abbreviation of Stanislavas, equivalent to Stanley in English. Juzefa Stanislavovna, Juzefa, Lithuanian version of Josephine, Stanislavovna, patronymic term referring to the author's father, Stanislavas, meaning daughter of Stanislav, the Russian version of the Lithuanian name Stanislavas. In Russia, it was used to show respect.